Hello, good afternoon, good morning, and welcome. I'm very pleased to be joined by Cody Bateman. Cody is the Chief Executive Officer of GenH2. So welcome, Cody. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And Cody, you come from I guess a very different perspective into the hydrogen world. Originally, sort of working on anti-tank guided missiles and propellants there, and applying sort of quantum mechanics, applied mathematics, and advanced computational physics to look at those propellants, and then I believe also working with NASA and have developed some very unique technology and I guess a unique approach specifically to liquid hydrogen. So could you give us a little bit of background to help us understand that sort of connection and how you've come into hydrogen and a specific sort of perspective?
Oh, absolutely. So really the beginning starts out with just understanding the needs for high energy concentration and how that energy can be used. And so my experience came from initially on the rockets, as you mentioned, in missile systems for the Department of Defense. And the key there was always understanding how you can use and how you can design systems that can, propel a payload, or to use this information, the technology, in a way to get the most out of the energy that you put in a concentrated format. And so as I was working on different missile systems and learning about propellants, the logical step was, how do the big boys do it? How does NASA actually propel these rockets to go to the moon and beyond? And so that became more of a general interest to me, more than anything. And so just shortly, 5 years out of college, I formed a company called Advanced Research, specifically to look at energy densities and understanding different formats of energy that can be controlled. That logically led to understanding not only hydrogen, but specifically liquid hydrogen, and how to mass that and how to gather the information from all the research that's been gathered to create not only solutions that were one-off, but actually for commercializations, which has ultimately led to GenH2.
Excellent. And some of those solutions, I mean, could you give us a little bit more understanding? I understand there's been a lot of I guess comments around the efficiency of hydrogen and that it's so volumetric, and obviously most people are focused around its gaseous form. So what are some of the ways that you're able to avoid those trade-offs and costs of creating liquid hydrogen, and then where are the benefits of that liquid hydrogen?
Well, I'll start with the benefits, because for us, we're looking at the long-term play. So we're not looking at a short-term solution. We do acknowledge the fact that there will come a time, you could say it's 50 years, you could say it's 200 years, where fossil fuels will actually start to expire. We know it's a finite number. We don't want to get in arguments of what that is. So the question is, we need to start the research now, because it will take decades to fully commercialize and get this spread across the globe and used everywhere. And so the goal for us primarily is to find out what is the ultimate energy store, what is the ultimate way of gathering energy, because just capturing energy from solar or wind or geothermal, that's very good and it's very isolated. But the goal is ultimately, how do you transport that electricity? And it can't always be by electrical lines. And then how do you store all that power? And that power, well, what we believe, and what all my research for decades has been, storing it in a liquid hydrogen format is really the only solution. And so what we've done is created a whole company to focus on not only the advanced research, but then how do you commercialize this and take it to the next level? I don't know if I answered all your question, but that's when you we unpick maybe the part around storage, and you're viewing that storage in I guess a short-term play or application, or more seasonal storage or longer-term storage. But when you think about storage, I guess they're quite different. And so and to answer your previous question about cost, currently it does cost more money especially to store liquid hydrogen in liquid format, and also to create that. We get that, and thanks to some subsidies we're getting from government agencies, especially with the most recent bill passed in the United States, the Inflation Reduction Act, there actually is wording in there that will help give us incentives and give us the chance to advance our technology to the point to make it more cost effective. And that's the bottom line. We acknowledge right now it's very hard to be cost competitive, but if you're starting to see what's happening in the market right now, the green hydrogen that we're looking at is actually to produce and store is now on par with the gray hydrogen. And that's just in the US and some places in Europe. If you go to Eastern Europe, where we're having issues, with the Russian-Ukraine issues that are going on right now, the cost of hydrogen is actually very cost competitive with diesel. And so we do expect that we're foreseeing this today, that in a 5 to 10 year period, the cost efficiencies will start to join up and we'll have new ways to do it. But that requires investment today to get to that point where we need to be in the near future.
Yeah. Understood. And in terms of, I guess, the link with NASA and some of the technologies, and I guess because talking about technology, it's IP effectively, and therefore sort of patents. Is there any of that technology that you have within Gen H2, which you think is unique or provides you with a competitive advantage?
Yeah, definitely. So that's one advantage we do have. And so we do have 2 members on my team that are actually part of the NASA Hall of Fame, specifically with cryogenic research and associated with NASA. I've been working with NASA off and on for more than 14 years. We have been able to secure a number of patents, and a lot of these patents are fairly small in scale, but when they're combined together into a system, we do have now a solution that is very unique and very powerful, I guess, to be able to do some of the work that we're doing. And so that's what our design is now. And so it goes back to my earlier comments. My team has always been tasked with doing the impossible. And that impossible becomes a lot more possible when you have the right tools in your toolbox. And our tools include a number of patents that we're consolidating and putting together. Some of these patents we have exclusives on, some of them are just research patents. But a lot of these patents, even exposed to the general commercial world, it takes a lot of trade secrets. It takes a lot of knowing how the patents were designed, why they were developed in the first place, and how to implement them. And that's really what makes us fairly unique.
Yeah. I was interested to read about zero boil off, but that's clearly one of the first things that comes to people's minds when they start talking about liquid and efficiencies and losing that. So how do you achieve that zero boil off? What's the magic sauce?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it's a technology that's been around for more than a decade. It's called internal refrigeration and storage. There's a lot of white papers already available on the internet that you can see and get information about internal refrigeration. But as it gases off, basically as it comes out in the gaseous format, we re-liquefy it and put it back into the system. And the cost efficiencies of there has to be addressed with the uses of the hydrogen. So this is primarily used if you need to store the hydrogen long term. And so we do anticipate this is going to be a growing trend, especially in truck stops. And the reason why this is important is you can't afford to have a truck, especially if it's carrying perishable goods, to show up at a station and not have the fuel it needs to go on and keep moving forward. So initially, with the hydrogen economy just now taking off, you actually have to build in anticipation of making sure that the hydrogen is available on demand at all times. And so initially, you may only have 5 or 10 trucks going to a stop on any given day. Then the next day, you may have 30, right? And so the goal is always having all the hydrogen on demand at every location. And so IRAS, or the internal refrigeration and storage we have for our solution, is actually critical to make this happen. Now, there will come a time where you'll be producing the hydrogen on site just in time. We can't afford that at this point. We really need to make sure there's almost zero latency in any issues with associated with the hydrogen, especially when it goes to commercial. And so the IRAS solution is a perfect fit for that today. And we do believe long term it's going to be critical as well, as these hydrogen stores could actually be used for more than just the transport that they may be put at a station at. For example, if there is an outage due to a hurricane or tornado, any type of environmental concern, the energy stored inside this liquid hydrogen tanks can be put through a fuel cell and actually power the gas station to keep the trucks running, to keep emergency vehicles up and operational, to immediately be put into other formats to help people get out of areas. And so it looks like that all this ties together in a single play at some point. And we're especially seeing this true for like ports. And so anytime you think about how much energy is used in a port, everything from the ships that can be pushed on hydrogen, but also the cranes, the forklifts, everything associated with getting the truck of these ships loaded and unloaded, as well as the infrastructure behind it. These things are heavily dependent on infrastructure from the IT side. So the hydrogen, once again, in case the power grid goes out, the hydrogen that's been stored at these facilities can immediately be put through fuel cells, and we'll have completely uninterrupted operations no matter what at ports as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned the IRA, the Inflationary Reduction Act. Just we're speaking maybe 2-3 days after it has been signed off, and you must be pretty excited about that in the US, and obviously the direction of travel that's showing. Are there any sort of specific parts to the act as you read it that are getting you excited?
Well, overall, from the hydrogen energy aspect of it, we're obviously very much in support of it. It's very difficult to really try to remain apolitical on this because everybody's trying to politicize this. But the interesting thing, if you take everything else and just focus on the energy aspect of it, it does lay the groundwork to allow companies, not just like Gen H2, but larger companies as well, to build the infrastructure and advance the technologies to being looking for the future. And that's exactly what the bill does. Where it fails a little bit is there is a personal concern that a lot of the monies will be going to larger corporations, which will be using those funds either back pay some of the work and research they've already done. And there won't be as much trickle down to small, medium-sized companies where, I believe you'll know this, is that a lot of the core technology that's coming out today is from small and medium-sized businesses, not from the larger corporations. And that technology that the small and medium-sized businesses have currently is what needs to be brought to the forefront. Because if you look at a lot of the filling stations in the United States, I was told yesterday, only 40 or 42 of the stations in California are actually up and operational. Yesterday, we've had issues with it. A lot of those stations are built on very antiquated technology. The whole concept of hydrogen and liquid hydrogen, specifically, goes back to the 1950s. So a lot of the technology that people are putting out there and commercializing is easily 40 if not 50-year-old technology. And these smaller companies now can bring this up to the forefront. So I'm hoping with this act being passed and the money's coming out, that some of this money can trickle down to the small and medium-sized businesses, bring up some of the technology and advancing it and then commercializing it. And it's going to be great, not only for the United States, but for the world.
Excellent. Yes, indeed. We're certainly very excited across the world and across the work that we're doing at World Hydrogen Leaders and specifically around some of our congresses and just seeing the momentum now spreading. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens on the US and equally specifically your technology piece. And clearly it's got a global significance. So yeah, we look forward to seeing Gen H2 on its journey, and we look forward to supporting you as much as we can.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, many thanks. It's been great chatting to you, Cody. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Have a good day.
Cheers. Bye-bye.